Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Pagani Design PD-1671. This watch is available from Pagani.design for $149 US. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the other items one gets with the piece. So this is the familiar matte black cardboard watch box that the watch comes in, and the watch sits inside on a piece of foam inside a foam cutout panel, as one would expect. Although basic, it does suffice in protecting the watch in shipping, but however, it is a disappointment because I personally would expect to see them using their premium watch box, bearing in mind that this is one of their more expensive pieces at $149 rather than the basic cardboard watch box they use with their less expensive versions. This is the plastic guarantee card. Now, on the reverse, it isn't filled in, but however, I'm pleased to report that the watch is indeed covered by a 12-month international guarantee, which is very reassuring. This is the plastic tag that comes with the watch, and as you can see, it has Pagani Design Top Waterproof embossed. Always a nice finishing touch to get a branded tag with a watch. This is the owner's instruction manual. Now, it is basic, but it does have diagrams and the instructions are in English. And if you're unfamiliar with the movement used in the piece, the Seiko NH35A automatic, it is a useful read because it details how to set the date complication, set the time, and operate the hand winding and hacking functions of the movement. So it is a useful read. Lastly, one also gets this branded microfiber polishing cloth, and again, irrespective of the price point of a piece, I always think it's a nice touch to get a branded microfiber polishing cloth. So, with regards to the specifications of the PD-1671, this is clearly an homage to the Tudor Black Bay, or one could also say it's an homage to the Tudor Black Bay 58 because it uses the same blue dial and blue bezel insert as the 58, although the Black Bay has the same proportions because it's closer, it's 41mm. This is a 42mm case diameter. It has a 50mm lug-to-lug measurement. The thickness is 14.6mm, including the domed sapphire crystal, and the lug width is 22mm. Now, I've previously owned a Tudor Black Bay, and it was one of the first reviews on my channel, so if you haven't seen that, please feel free to check out my Tudor Black Bay review and use that for reference in comparison to this piece. So the Black Bay is a 41mm, but it shares the same 22mm lug width, and this is 42mm, so very close proportions. The overall thickness is also very close to the Tudor Black Bay at 14.6mm. Now, one thing I want to bring to your attention is this is a very large and heavy piece. If you're a collector with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, I'm straight away going to say it is too large and too heavy to be comfortable to wear for long periods of time. It weighs 180 grams. Now, a 40mm dive piece with an oyster style bracelet like this would normally weigh 150 grams. So really 180 grams is 30 grams more heft than one would usually expect, even though it's slightly larger at 42mm. So that's something to bear in mind. 42mm is a large case diameter, 14.6 is a thick piece, and as you can see, it does have the same slab sides to the flanks of the case as the Tudor Black Bay. Now, with regards to the case finishing, for some reason Pagani Design have elected to longitudinally brush satin finish the flanks rather than mirror polishing it, and I think that was a mistake. The Tudor Black Bay has mirror polished flanks, and although it does display the slab sides of the case, they are aesthetically pleasing. Now, the problem is that the quality of the brushed satin finish to the flanks is not of a high standard. We've seen on the PD-1661 and PD-1662 that Pagani Design are capable of mirror polishing flanks of the case to a flawless mirror finish. So I think they've made a mistake using this brushed satin finish, and the quality of the finishing isn't as good as on the bracelet. As you can see, the brushed satin finish to the 316L grade stainless steel on the bracelet links gives a better luster. The quality of the finishing is higher. But on the flank, as you can see, it's not good. So it's the same on both flanks, on the left hand flank and the right hand flank. One can see the grains to the 316L grade stainless steel, but however it's not brushed to a satisfactory standard, so there is room for improvement with that. With regards to the specification, it uses the iconic Tudor snowflake dial, which was used in the 1970s on the Snowflake Submariner and then later used on the Tudor Pelagos. And ironically, although this is an homage to the Tudor Black Bay, I actually think the use of the snowflake dial with the snowflake hands works better than on the Black Bay, which used the classic Submariner dial layout. So I like these square applied indices, and I think they work well with the snowflake hands. The snowflake dial and snowflake hands were the original design of the Tudor Submariner. The textured dial does add interest to the dial, and it reminds me of the Grand Tapisserie dial used by Audemars Piguet on the Royal Oak. And it was also used on the Tudor 1926, so it does really fit with the snowflake dial and Tudor snowflake hands to use that Tudor 1926 textured dial finish. So it's nice, it's aesthetically pleasing, and it does add interest. Now, with regards to the domed sapphire crystal, yes, it is very aesthetically pleasing. It's got a lovely characteristic distortion when one tilts the piece at an oblique angle. It's single domed rather than double domed, so that means it's flat on the underside and curved on the top side, and therefore one gets a characteristic slight distortion and also magnification of the applied indices and the snowflake hands. But however, I don't mind that because it does add interest and it does give it a vintage aesthetic. The negative is that it doesn't have AR coating on the underside, and as you can see, the lack of anti-reflective coating means it's a highly glossy and reflective piece with lots of glare. So in direct sunlight, as you can see, it is more difficult to read the snowflake hands and applied indices because they are silver and highly reflective. Date complication at 3 o'clock as one would expect, and I really like the layout of the snowflake dial, and I think it's very pleasing with the snowflake hands. The bezel is well executed, coin edge finished, solid stainless steel, and we have an aluminium bezel insert which is anodized blue. The tone of the blue anodized bezel insert does complement the textured dial. I think they've got the colour match of the blue tones very well. However, one criticism I want to level at the watch is the use of a red anodized ring on the crown. I don't know why they didn't leave it silver as per the Black Bay, or alternatively colour code it to make it blue to match the bezel insert, for example. On the Black Bay 58 it's silver, and on the Black Bay 41mm version they colour code the crown to match the colour of the bezel. So burgundy bezel, burgundy crown, midnight blue bezel, midnight blue crown, and that works perfectly well. So I would prefer to see Pagani Design change it to either silver or alternatively colour code it to blue to match the anodized bezel insert. It really doesn't make sense. It's a contradiction to have a red anodized crown which doesn't match anything else on the watch. Now, with regards to the crown execution, coin edge finish, solid stainless steel, signed with the Pagani Design emblem, absolutely silky smooth. One of the things I really like about Pagani Design watches, including this piece, is the silky smooth thread action. It's an absolute pleasure to pull out the crown to the first position, to manually wind it and top up the Seiko NH35A to its maximum 40-hour power reserve. You pull it out to the first click to set the date complication. The second click sets the time. So it's a very well executed crown action, silky smooth thread, good interface between the internal thread of the crown and the external thread of the crown tube. So no complaints whatsoever, and the crown does provide an effective hermetic seal to 100 meters of water resistance, as does the screw down exhibition caseback. So the exhibition caseback is stainless steel, concentric brushed satin finish. The circumference of it contrasts with a mirror polished finish, and the centre section is glazed with mineral crystal. So it's a very well executed screw down exhibition caseback, providing 100 meters of water resistance. And one thing I like about it is it contrasts with the underside of the case, because the circumference is mirror polished but the centre section is brushed satin finish. The end links are well executed, good fit to the case, and one feature I really like about it is the use of female end links, which are pivoted. As you can see, the end link can pivot underneath the case to give a better fit. Now, often on homages to the Black Bay, one sees male end links which do not pivot, and the problem is that gives a long lug-to-lug measurement, which for collectors with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches means they can't get a comfortable fit. So although this is a long case at 50mm lug-to-lug measurement, I personally prefer 48mm, which I consider to be the sweet spot. The use of the pivoted end links and the female end links do work very well because they allow the bracelet to move slightly underneath that large 50mm lug-to-lug measurement. So they articulate more, and this is the same as on the Tudor Black Bay, so I think Pagani Design deserve full credit for using female pivoted end links. The quality of the rivet bracelet is finished to a very high standard, and it's just a shame that they didn't finish the flanks of the case to the same quality as the bracelet links. As you can see, the 316L grade stainless steel has a lovely luster to it. And they've really replicated the Tudor Black Bay's rivet bracelet very well. The quality of the rivets in the links is done very well, and there are screw pins in the final links to remove links to fine-tune the adjustment. I do like the clasp. It's a 2-button push clasp rather than a flip-lock clasp, and I would like to see Pagani Design introduce this 2-button clasp to replace the flip-lock used on the PD-1661 and PD-1662. Solid stainless steel milled interior, as one would expect, finished to a high standard. But however, there is a clear cost-cutting measure which is very disappointing. The diver's extension link is pressed metal. Now it is made from stainless steel rather than being plated metal, but however, it really does feel poor quality. And I would prefer to see them use a milled diver's extension rather like the diver's extension used on the PD-1661 and PD-1662. There's no excuse for using pressed metal diver's extensions. It's a clear cost-cutting measure, and it really does disappoint because, although it does click in and out satisfactorily, this is a nice clasp. It's well executed, the build quality, the brush satin finish to it are all done very well. Mirror polishing to the flanks. 3 micro adjustment holes. I would prefer to see 5 micro adjustment holes, however 3 is acceptable. So really it's just let down by that pressed metal diver's extension, and that's something I would like to see Pagani Design just remove rather than using a poor quality diver's extension. Better not to have one at all. But however, the underside is finished as well as the top side, and the mirror polishing to the flanks of the rivet links is done to a very high standard. So good quality bracelet, but it's let down by the poor quality of the finishing to the case. The brush satin finish to the flanks, as I've discussed, really does need to be improved. Now, with regards to bezel action, it's a 60-click unidirectional bezel. Personally, I prefer 120-click bezels because they give a smoother feel. The 60-click ratcheting mechanism feels more notchy, it doesn't feel as smooth, and I don't like having the large gaps in between each click. There is very slight lateral side-to-side play, which is a disappointment, and the other problem is there is slight back play, as you can see. Now it is minimal back play, we're talking about half a click, but unfortunately the problem is magnified by it being a 60-click bezel because it allows the bezel to rotate more. So we're getting half a click of back play. They could have improved the bezel action if they used a 120-click bezel like the PD-1661. I recently reviewed one, and the bezel action was like Steinhardt Ocean 1 quality. It was the very best bezel action I've experienced on a Pagani Design to date. So they are capable of doing it, and I really think they've made a mistake by using a 60-click bezel rather than the 120-click. If they had made it to the same PD-1661 quality with 120 clicks, a nice tight bezel action, they would have reduced the lateral side-to-side play and that half a click of back play. In a 120-click bezel, the half a click of back play wouldn't be as noticeable. But they're obviously trying to copy the Tudor Black Bay, which does indeed have a 60-click unidirectional bezel. So I'll give you a wrist shot, and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, on a positive note, it will fit up to a 9-inch wrist. I have an 8-inch wrist, and as you can see, I can easily fit an index finger underneath the bracelet and clasp at all times. I haven't sized the bracelet, so you'll have no problems whatsoever if you're a collector with a larger wrist. It does wear with wrist presence, and it is noticeable that it is a heavy piece at 180 grams. It really does feel 30 grams heavier than a Pagani Design PD-1661 on the Oyster bracelet, for example. So if you like pieces with wrist presence and heft, you will like the fact it's 14.6mm thick, 42mm case, and it weighs 180 grams. But to be honest with you, if you're going to be wearing this as a daily wear piece for long periods of time, and I mean 8 to 12 hours per day, you're eventually going to find it uncomfortable on the wrist because it does feel top heavy. It feels like a big slab of stainless steel, and really it's not very well balanced by the 22mm Oyster bracelet because the clasp is quite light, and therefore the head of the piece feels a lot heavier, more top heavy than the bracelet. On a Tudor Black Bay, it feels more balanced. The bracelet is heavier and it does taper with 22mm, tapering down to 18mm at the clasp. But the bracelet on a Tudor Black Bay is significantly heavier. The links feel more weighty. So it balances the head of the piece better. So I would say to you that this is a large and heavy piece. Really, it's only suitable for collectors with a larger 7 to 8 inch wrist. I would disregard it if you have a 6 to 7 inch wrist. But having said that, it is a very aesthetically pleasing piece. I do like the textured dial and I like the anodized blue bezel. Very good looking watch on the wrist, and I like the dome sapphire crystal. So it does really do a good job of being an homage to the Black Bay 58 or the Black Bay. But however, it's just disappointing with the cost-cutting measures of the diver's extension link and also the poor quality case finishing. So let's do a lume test and we'll see how it performs when it's charged up to its absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to its absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it is disappointing. It is absolutely inexcusable, regardless of the price point of a watch, to have a mismatch in the colour of the lume. We have C3 luminova on the applied indices and the lume pip on the bezel insert, and we have blue luminova on the snowflake hands. I don't know why they didn't use the same colour lume, either blue on the indices or green, but not both. So really, this is something very confusing, because on the burgundy bezel version, they use green C3 luminova on the snowflake hands and also the indices, so it matches on the burgundy version. On the black bezel version and the blue bezel version you're looking at here, they have the same problem. They have blue hands and green applied indices. So they've got it right on the burgundy version, but they got it wrong on the black bezel version and the blue bezel version. So that's something to bear in mind. Now, with regards to the quality of the luminova, yes, it has improved. This lume is definitely better quality, and when I'm talking about quality, I mean it's glowing brighter and it's continuing to glow for a better length of time, a longer period of time, than on the PD-1662 and PD-1661, for example. I recently reviewed a PD-1661, which is the latest 2021 version, and they have improved the quality of the lume used on that piece. So yes, the quality in terms of its performance is better than previous Pagani design watches. As you can see, it's continuing to glow brightly for a good length of time. Not as good as BGW9 or C3 Superluminova, but one has to expect some cost-cutting measures. It's just a shame that they didn't use C3 Superluminova on the hands to have the same green tone. Really, it doesn't work well to have that mismatch. So that's a disappointment, but if it's going to be a problem, I would suggest you buy the burgundy version because they've got it right. They've got green hands and green applied indices. Now, with regards to the movement used, it uses the Seiko NH35A, which is made in Japan. The NH35A is made by Seiko in two plants in Malaysia and Japan respectively, and I'm pleased to report that this is the Japanese version. 24 joules, it has hand winding and hacking, and it runs at 21,600 vibrations per hour and a frequency of 3 Hz. Now, the negative of a 3 Hz movement, as I've discussed in previous reviews, is the second-hand stutters or judders around the dial rather than sweeping smoothly. With a 4 Hz movement running at 28,800 vibrations per hour, the second hand has a smoother sweep. With a Seiko movement, and Seiko typically use 21,600 vibrations per hour and 3 Hz, as you can see, the second hand judders more rather than sweeping smoothly. So that's a minor negative, but for the majority of collectors it's not going to be a problem. It has a 40-hour power reserve, and as discussed, it has hand winding and hacking, which are useful functions. The stated accuracy of the NH35A is -20 to +40 seconds per day. Now, I'm pleased to report that this one is running at +10 seconds per day, which is perfectly acceptable. And it's running consistently at +10 when it's fully wound to its 40-hour power reserve. So, good, solid, reliable workhorse movement, and I like the use of the NH35A. I think it is the correct movement for this piece. So, lastly, I'll surmise the piece. What do I think of it overall? Well, when I'm considering reviewing a watch on my channel, the watch should meet 2 criteria. It should be both excellent quality and excellent value at the respective price point. So the price point of this watch is $149 US. I think the value is okay. I'm not going to say it's good value and I'm not going to say it's excellent value because of the shortcomings. The mismatch in the Lume colour is very disappointing. The slight bezel back play and slight lateral side to side play is again disappointing. Most disappointing is the quality of the finishing on the flanks of the case. I really think that they could improve upon that, and also the diver's extension link, as I've discussed, is a clear cost-cutting measure. And really, these are the cost-cutting measures that reduce the watch from being excellent to good and then down to being okay. So I would say the quality is okay. Now, with regards to the value, $149 it's one of the more expensive Pagani design watches, and the truth is I don't consider it to be excellent value. I think the value is okay. A better buy, if you're looking for excellent quality and excellent value, is the PD-1671, which I recently reviewed. That gets everything right. The quality of the lume has improved, the bezel action has improved. Everything about that PD-1661 is very good for circa $70. I think really if Pagani Design are going to be charging more for their watches, such as $149, they really have to get the things right that they're getting wrong. The bezel action has to be correct, the colour of the lume has to match, and also they have to use a solid milled diver's extension rather than pressed metal. These are clear cost-cutting measures and defects that one cannot excuse at $149. Yes, one can excuse them at $70, but not at $149. And really, the case finishing has to be improved. If you're going to be charging $149, one has to have perfect, flawless finishing, regardless of whether it's brushed satin finish or mirror polished. So I would say to you, it's an okay value watch and it's okay quality, but for that reason I can't declare it a champagne watch for lemonade money, as I like to do with excellent value and excellent quality watches. But however, I am going to recommend it to you for your consideration if you are looking to purchase a Tudor Black Bay Homage. It is a good looking piece, but however, bear in mind the shortcomings. So I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Pagani Design PD-1671. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you very much.